Welcome to Uncensored Beat.
I showed up. U.S. citizen is not permitted entry.
Cover the next big attack.
Zelensky's seemingly fraudulent election.
Bilateral security agreement President Joe Biden signed.
Quebec, the communist capital of North America.
What do Ukrainians think about US? Some believe that the US is to blame for this war.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Uncensored Beat. My name is James on the Go Bradley.
And I'm Flor Blanco.
And I'm Linda Cohn.
And today's segment is a very special segment for California, and specifically a Senate race here in California. And goodness gracious, we have a lot to unpack. So, Florida, take it away.
So today we're going to be focusing on the California Senate race for District 29, involving the incumbent Josh Newman. His district covers parts of Los Angeles County, Orange County, and San Bernardino. Includes specifically the cities of Anaheim, Brea, Buena Park, Chino Hills, City of Industry, Cypress, Diamond Bar, Fullerton, La Habra, La Palma, Placentia, Rowland Heights, Stanton, Walnut, West Covina, and Yorba Linda. And today, helping us to take a deeper look into Josh Newman is Linda Cohn. And Linda is a local legend here in Orange County, California. She is actually one of my personal heroes. She's involved in the effort to return our schools back to sound academics, to have them move away from social engineering, and also to free the schools from the negative influence of the California teachers unions. So Linda, thank you so much for joining.
My pleasure.
Can you give us a little bit more background?
Well, I taught in public schools when it was a lot better. I was actually a debate coach and also a trainer of teachers. And when I retired, I just didn't stop. I did work for the district, Fullerton Union High School District, but then I got involved in a lot of research on what was coming down the pike in terms of policy legislation, the integrity of textbooks, just a long list of things. And that's what I've done for about the last 25 some years.
You've been doing a really great job at it. I know that we have been actually engaged in a lot of the local efforts within the county, which we're going to actually get deeper into. Let's just start with the background of Senator Josh Newman. So for our audience, if you're unaware, Josh Newman is actually the only person within the California legislature to be reelected after being recalled by his constituents in 2018. And this was apparently due to his support in increasing the gas taxes. However, in 2020, he ran again and was reelected. So, Linda, why do you think he was able to get his seat back?
Well, got to be honest, the person that he was going back and forth with was not a particularly strong candidate. And I think in that election where he was able to reclaim the seat, basically that election paralleled other elections, that it was very close. And if I recall correctly, the candidate, the Republican he was running against, did not really have a vibrant campaign. And her philosophy, when I would talk to her, was kind of this go along, get along type of philosophy. And Josh is a very good politician. I didn't really appreciate how good he was until I was in a room of people where he was coming in kind of as an outsider. And I saw him in action, really working with people for the first time. And before that, I thought he was kind of a goofball. But that's when I learned that this guy is really a consummate politician. I don't know whether he's always had that skill, but I think he has it now. So I can understand why he won that seat back easily.
Yeah, the career politicians of today, they're very good at sensing, and a lot of them, oddly, many of them are odd ducks, kind of on the fringe. We see that in DC here and also in Sacramento. So your observations about Josh are very common, to be honest. So what do you think about Senator Newman's confidence and commitment to rerun in 2020 to get his seat back?
Well, I think this speaks to his character. He's committed to his party. He's committed to the job. He is good at running campaigns. So I think he saw in his opponent an opportunity to win back that seat, given the back and forth, the give and take. May have been at a time where the Democrats seemingly were increasing the complete takeover of this state. Beyond that, I'm not really sure, but I think he was in a good position to take back that seat.
What I've noted about career politicians, they know the lay of the land. They use some really extensive background and research to understand the constituents and what are the key phrases. They also rest on short memories. Many of the constituents, yeah, many of the constituents don't want anything to do with politics, never mind at the state level. So they really have that benefit of people's short-term memory. So maybe that war really kind of ruled in Josh's favor.
I think you're spot on. The short memory part, and I think there, as I said, there was a kind of this shift where the Democrats were on a roll. They were very successful in reaching a dominance in this state. Part of that I attribute to the inability of the Republican Party to run strong opponents in some cases, or to run a strong counterpoint campaign type of agenda.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not the expert when it comes to politics. I'm just a retired teacher.
Well, without teachers, we really wouldn't have, we wouldn't be speaking today, would we?
No, we wouldn't.
I know. And by the way, we have Florida, Flor, we call her Flor. I call her Caleb, by the way. She was a former Democrat, so you could speak to how the Democrat engine works, how organized they are, how methodical, and really they go and they tug on those heartstrings, don't they, Florida?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, actually, I've actually been able to really admire the level of maturity in which the Democrats operate as an organization. I am no longer a Democrat, I'm non-party. And one of the reasons why I am is because the Republican Party has failed to learn those lessons. And what's interesting is that it's not that it's anything new, it's lessons that are sound organizational management lessons that any large body of groups follow, because they're a best practice. So hopefully the Republican Party would be able to get some learn some lessons from that. So, but going back to Josh Newman, his actions are actually reflective of his commitment to have politics as a career. And so, understandably so, after being recalled, it seemed he curiously introduced a bill to change the recall requirements in 2022, in which he had a press release stating that the constitutional amendments are not everyday events. I don't favor big changes for small matters. So I guess what he was talking about in that quote is that this change to the recall requirements would be a change to the California Constitution. But according to Ballotpedia, the California Constitution has been amended 523 times. So why do you think that Senator Newman suggests that the California Constitution is rarely amended?
I'm at a loss to explain that. I mean, again, I don't know the agenda here. I think it was perhaps to achieve what he was trying to achieve, to get some changes made, but beyond, why, I don't know.
Maybe I could share a little background. We went through a series of recalls with Governor Newsom. And I believe to gain favor politically, Josh saw that as an opportunity to align themselves closely with the power base in Sacramento. So any senator or assembly person that creates a frontline defense, in some cases offense, to go against any opposing forces, because you made an observation earlier about a Democrat-controlled state. We are. I've never seen such a blue state, and many even question the ability or the likelihood of a Republican or any differing party aside from Democrat to win a seat at that level, state assembly, and now it's kind of going down to the lower levels of city council, board of supervisors, and now school boards. So with a stronghold of Democrat majority in the state, I can see Josh wanting to put his neck out on the line saying, enough of the recalls. It's a nuisance. It's a waste of taxpayer funds. When in fact, it's the proper use of taxpayer funds. So I submit that for your thought and comments.
Well, I think you're right. I really do. That would explain it. And as a career politician, it would make a lot of sense that he would do exactly that.
Okay. So Linda, can you give us a background about Senator Newman's legislative record?
And I would really like to talk about Senator Newman as now chairman of the Education Committee in the Senate. As far as I'm concerned, he basically is one of the key legislators. There are quite a few of them that is there to do the bidding of the California Teachers Association. Probably around 2019, I'm not sure. The California Teachers Association passed what they call a civil rights policy. And that particular policy, I think, came out of the comprehensive sexual education framework, and that was with this heavily influence on protecting the LGBTQ community. And this particular policy stated that children ought to have a right to obtain gender-sensitive services without the barrier of parent consent. And that was directly their wording. And when that policy passed, there'd already been a lot of legislation to protect the rights of the LGBT kids. But this was a real turning point. And basically what happened as a result, as soon as that policy passed, we had AB 1184, and this was a landmark bill, and it gave minors access to sensitive gender services paid for by parents' insurance without parent knowledge and consent. And that was a bill that Josh Newman promoted and shepherded and obviously voted for. And then there were some other bills that followed that. Shortly thereafter, we had AB 665, and that allowed a minor child to independently request mental health services as well as residential shelter. And children as young as 12 were no longer even required to prove that they were in any kind of danger or being abused physically. All a child had to do was go to an adult at a school site, a counselor, and say, I want mental health services, and I don't like the way my parents are not affirming my transition, and that child could be taken away without parents even knowing. He also, and of course, Josh Newman supported this. He also supported SB 107, and that allowed the termination of parent control if a child came out of state. Remember, California's a sanctuary state
Mm.
for these kinds of gender services. And so if a child came from out of state, it gives the legal right to terminate parent control so that those children coming from out of state could, gain those same services. There was also a bill that he actually abstained on this one. I guess he just didn't have the guts to take a stand on it because CTA opposed it. But this is SB 1435, and this would have required the removal of obscene material from school libraries serving K through 8 grades. He abstained on that bill because of CTA's opposition. The latest one, of course, is received an incredible amount of attention. That is, let's see, AB 1955. And everybody's talking about AB 1955 as a parent notification bill. And that's part of it. It's a big part of it that you cannot require a teacher to tell a parent if their child is being transitioned. That's not the greatest danger in this bill. What AB 1955 does is it creates a barrier of protection around any staff member on a school campus that is encouraging, supporting, or keyword affirming the transitioning of a child. That teacher or staff person, or even administrator, cannot be disciplined for doing that. And that, I think, is the greatest danger of 1955. The reason is that all it takes is one person at a school, maybe two. People say that's not happening. I live in a very conservative community where it did happen. And I saw the letter that the teacher wrote to Danny, not the child's real name, encouraging Danny to join the group that was on the same path, encouraging Danny that the teacher would support everything that he needed and would never tell the parents, encouraging Danny to go to a particular classroom where there were other students, encouraging Danny to wear a chest binder. And then, here's the key point, and then expressing at the end, after all of this encouragement, not telling the parents, that this teacher was very concerned about Danny's statement that sometimes the child didn't want to really live any longer. That concerns me. And now it's legally protected.
Actually, so there's a couple things that I do want to ask. But I'm going to stop here. James, did you have something?
Oh, no, I mean, I'm not shocked, but I am shocked to know.
Well, this was Josh Newman was full bore on
Yeah.
1955, full
Yeah.
support. And of course, CTA was promoting it too. This was the gut and amend bill, and it was rushed through, and then the governor signed it.
Yeah.
So,
But I mean, I want to add one thing. You realize that under those conditions, can you honestly say that it's safe to send a vulnerable child into a public school where there might be just one or two teachers on this radical agenda?
right.
It happened in my own district.
Mhm.
To know
Yeah,
that they're giving them legal immunity
Yeah.
for grooming and sexual in many respects. To those, the LG community, which are firmly against the grooming movement that we've seen
Yes.
under gender affirmation, which clearly is not. we've all seen this. And honestly, I think the movement is now. We've seen with the results with Newsom signing and ratifying this bill, with hopefully some TROs, temporary restraining orders,
Mhm.
you're going to see the force in motion that will not only repeal this, but I go one step further, being a politician, hold those to account that presented these type of bills that are unlawful, that put our children in harm's way.
Right.
So I just want to add that, because being a father, this is my world. In Florida, being a mother, she could speak to that as well.
Mhm. Well, and I think that the one thing that the bill cannot prohibit is the independent legal action that might be taken by a parent in this regard. But parents, the parent of Danny, again, not the child's real name, did not do that. Even though the impact that this situation had on the child was devastating, that this child ended up in a mental unit in a nearby hospital. And I really don't know what the child's situation is now, but the parent never, initially, the father was going to pull out all stops and really take whatever it took to call these people out. But it was never followed through. And I think parents, and I understand it, that parents, a lot of them are reluctant to act.
So I got a couple comments in what you had just said, and specifically in regards to AB 1955. I did read the bill, and I did find that to one section related to what you were talking about, harassment. I thought that was very interesting, that a parent wanting to know about their child and maybe any kind of question or action that the parent may have a result of being surprised by this new information, right, was considered harassment, because it would any parent would be concerned about things that are going on with his or her child, whether it's bullying or bad grades. The other thing too, that's really, I think it's really important for many parents to know, is the relationship to clubs who are involved in promoting this type of indoctrination. Now, any club within a school requires the support of a teacher, a staff member, to exist. So that's the other thing that I think is very important. It's not run solely by children, or by students, I should say, but there is an influential staff member, which then again, I think would call into question, what kind of motives would that person have? And it's being done without any awareness by the parent.
That's a problem.
So right now, let's just take a break for our sponsors to weigh in so we can keep our lights on. So we'll be right back with you.
Welcome to Uncensored Beat.
I showed up. U.S. citizen is not permitted entry.
Cover the next big attack.
Zelensky's seemingly fraudulent election.
Bilateral security agreement President Joe Biden signed.
Quebec, the communist capital of North America.
What do Ukrainians think about US? Some believe that the US is to blame for this war.
And welcome back. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share as much as you can, because we are the Uncensored Beat, the unfiltered truth. Now back to our interview.
So Linda, thanks again for joining us. You had shared a wealth of information. In addition to these horrible bills that Josh Newman has introduced that have impacted education throughout the state of California, it seems like recently he had drafted a bill that only affects the Orange County Board of Education. And I think that's kind of a curious thing. And the bill is to go ahead and expand the number of members in the Orange County Board of Education from 5 to 7. Now, currently, the board is majority conservative. And what's interesting
It's
is
totally conservative. And that's why Josh is targeting them.
well, Orange County is one of 57 other counties. That's what's so interesting. What are your thoughts about this bill?
Well, let's see, where do I begin? When you can't beat them at the ballot box, then you've got to take other measures. And even the California School Board Association called this a blatant political ploy. It's laughable. It is absolutely laughable. Every single member of the County Board of Education, by the way, I've been going to board meetings at the county level for about almost 10 years now. I know most of these members quite well, both past and present. And this is the most conservative board that I've seen. It's always been a mix. Every single member was elected to that board in the most recent election by a wide majority. The only election that was even close was Ken Williams, and that was because the union poured buckets of money into Nancy Watson's campaign. And that was the only race that was close. We had board members winning by almost 20 points. We had board members winning in strong Democrat areas by that kind of margin. So it makes sense if you have a Democrat point of view that if you can't stop them at the ballot box, you've got to take additional measures, which is exactly what Newman did. And the arguments that he used to justify this particular measure are highly questionable. The idea that the population is growing, correct me if I'm wrong, but Orange County population is decreasing.
Yes.
So I don't quite get why that has to be a reason. The idea that the board, the 5-member board is not able to represent this not so growing population is not countered by any kind of evidence whatsoever. In fact, this board has become a magnet for parents to come address their grievances at their local districts. And there was a meeting probably a couple of years ago that when Mary Barkey was president, she did something that was rather extraordinary. Even though there were about maybe close to 100 parents that were wanting to speak, again, about local problems, she allowed each member 3 minutes. And public comment went on for hours. And I think what that did is sent a message. The Orange County Board of Education, which at that point was, I think, a 4-1 conservative majority, will listen to you. Whereas the other avenues that you have will not. So that kind of explains why this board is being elected and reelected by these wide margins. But why just this board? When San Diego has 5 members, and it's a much larger area, Los Angeles County has 7 members. None of them are elected. They're all appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So why this board? Well, if you can come up with a reasonable answer. Another reason that he gave was, this discussion about growing to 7 members to provide better representation has been going on for a long time. It's been discussed quite extensively. I attend these board meetings. I talked to Ken Williams about this. Ken's now president. He's been on the board for 28 years. I said, have you ever heard of this? Has it ever come up? I have never heard this issue raised at a board meeting. I have never heard it raised in public comment. Where is this coming from? Well, I'll tell you where it's coming from. It's coming from Democrats that got voted off the board that want their seats back. And this is one way where maybe they'll have a better opportunity of getting that seat back, particularly if they can jury-rig the redistricting so that we can cancel out some of these doggone conservatives and get those empty seats filled by Democrats. That's my take on Josh Newman's little bill.
I can clearly see that strategy as well, because really his rationale doesn't make any sense whatsoever from, a common sense approach. I always look at everything in more of a common sense angle, critical thinking skills, which we're all kind of losing in our younger generation. However, I won't go down that path, will I, Florida?
Well, so just want to comment about a couple things that you've said. So it is a question as to whether Josh Newman is supporting the party of the Democrats, because many of the bills that are being enacted today that he had supported, several of them that you have listed, they impact families of both parties. And as far as I understand, there are many parents and guardians, aunts, uncles, and grandparents that are highly concerned of those laws on both sides of the aisles, or all sides of the aisles of political parties. So really the question is who is Josh Newman representing?
CTA.
California Teachers Union, lobbyists.
Yeah. CTA and their allies, Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
There's a lot of money to be made off of these kids who are transitioning. I think it was, might have been Erin Friday, I'm not sure, but she calculated something in the neighborhood of $1.5 million. And if you are able to take control of a school district and set up these wellness spaces, wellness centers, and put in those wellness centers representatives, and this has happened in Orange County, Planned Parenthood, Chalk Hospital, if you can get a representative there, you create a conduit that is sheltered by law from parents ever knowing what happened to their child.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Yeah, it is actually very scary. I think even from a perspective of just an active citizen that's concerned, it's very hard to engage the appropriate section of government. And the reason why I'm saying that is that a lot of this also bleeds into activities in which the county is involved. And so there's funding within the county that helps support the system you had just talked about. And I was actually, I actually witnessed that within the local Orange County board, in which there was a question in regards to whether the county board should approve additional funding for the pipeline of, quote, social services, right, that would support this gender transitioning. And so a lot of the arguments given were from the perspective of indoctrination of students, basically the root, right? The root cause that brought them to that situation, to have that conversation with the doctor or with the person from social services. So the problem is when you present at the Orange County Council, County Council, Board of Supervisors, it's not within their jurisdiction to address that specific argument. So it's this really very intricate, very mature network in which even just as an active citizen, it's sometimes even hard to deconstruct and see how you can undo it. So that's the other scary thing about it, is that even though it's rooted within the schools, it branches out into networks that actually are beyond the schools, which is, like you had said, is kind of in which the conduit, like you said, are these wellness centers. And that's a scary thing.
It is. Well, and I think, Florida, you've heard me talk often about how Orange County is ground zero for Sacramento's education reform under the leadership of Al Maharis, who was in position of county superintendent of schools for 9 years. And when Dr. Maharis and his staff competed for the rights for the MTSS grant coming out of Sacramento, it was already, I think, predetermined that Orange County was going to get that, simply because Dr. Maharis had worked actively with the group that created Common Core. And when he came back into the county, he already was beginning to promote the agenda that is behind Common Core, which includes comprehensive sexual education. And once they won that MTSS grant, then you had an ongoing flow of grant money coming to the department to implement any law that came out of Sacramento that had to be then disseminated all over the state of California. Hence, one of the most conservative counties in the state. Ironically, we can do it in Orange County. We can do it anywhere. But one of those conservative counties won the right to promote and to implement any legislation coming out of CTA-controlled Sacramento. And of course, then you have to address the issue of the union, CTA. I mean, there's been an incredible, Ken talks about this, but there's been an incredible mission shift in CTA in just recent years. I kind of like to draw some dividing lines, although it may go back before, but I think when Common Core came in, and then of course, then you had the pandemic, this put CTA even more strongly on the path of no longer wages, hours, and working conditions, but this is an activist organization with a hardcore left agenda, as exemplified in the kind of laws that we talked about earlier, most notably 1184, which was inspired by CTA policy, and of course 1955, which was fully backed by CTA.
And just for our audiences, can you describe to them what MTSS is?
Yes, I can. It stands for multi-tiered system support. Now, doesn't that explain everything? Of course. It's educational jargon that I think creates an attitude of, well, I really don't know much about multi-tiered system support, so I can't really question that. But what it is it's an elaborate system of control that posits the notion that about 50%, 50-60% of our students are okay, at least when MTSS began. I'm not sure that it's that high now, that they can function in a regular school system under regular classes and need very little support. Then there's another probably 30-40% that need support periodically. And then there's the tip of the triangle where the kids at that tip are special needs kids that need constant support. When I looked at that triangle and I thought, wow, that's kind of the way I saw it when I was teaching back in the 20th century. Most of the kids, were able to function. There were some kids that needed some help, extra tutoring, extra classes, and then there were kids at the top that needed constant support. So there's nothing new conceptually about MTSS. Let me tell you what is new about it. It's basically the tie-in with critical race theory and all the LGBT issues, the comprehensive sexual education, the social justice. All of this is a web of, let's stop just talking about academics and let's deal with the whole child and let's concentrate on the whole child. But the fundamental goal of this whole program is to transform, this is my opinion, transform California education from its emphasis on academics, and at one point had the highest standards in math and English language arts before Common Core came in. And we were doing very well, thank you very much. When Common Core came in, that shifted the emphasis to the whole child and the socio-emotional part of that child. So now we have a system where you go to an MTSS conference, you will hear nothing about curriculum as it relates to academics. You will hear a lot about the socio-emotional child and the social justice agenda. You'll hear a lot about how children need to have a voice in their education. Think about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Think
Yeah,
about it. It's the children who know best. I have heard adults say this. Children know best what they need. When I hear that, I think, you're nuts.
Right.
Well, what's interesting is
children know best what they need. Give me 3 chocolate chip cookies.
Thank you.
well, I mean, you go into biology class, right? And you learn about the different classes of animals, right? I think classes are I don't know what their gene I can't remember. Basically, mammals existed, right? And they existed because of the role of a parent, right? Which was the mother, right? And the father, right? To help grow the child. And we can go down that road, but I mean, it's my point of that is that there is at the very basic level this biological connection that requires the interaction of the parent knowing what to do and
Exactly.
child,
The
right?
parent being the closest and the most caring individual.
Right.
But now we have this agenda where, frankly, CTA is at war with parents and children. I mean, why else? How do you explain something like CTA's position on a bill? Let's see, it was, I think it was AB 2222. This is the bill that would have trained teachers all over the state in reading science, emphasizing phonics, has a mountain of evidence to prove that it works. It is the best way. And this goes back for decades, decades, where the science of reading, if you want a child to read, which, by the way, empowers that child to be a full-fledged adult. If you want that child to be proficient in math, if you want a child to read, then phonics is the way to teach this. CTA would not allow AB 2222 to even be heard in the California legislature, not to be heard, not to be examined, not to be discussed, not to be even amended if necessary for a better implementation. Explain that to me.
Yeah,
because that's no longer the agenda in public education in California. But getting back to this war on parents, I go to school board meetings in my own area now, Placentia or Belinda, and teachers are railing about these parents who have the audacity to want to have a say in what's going on in their local schools. I I taught in a time where we took the kids in the morning, we sent them home in the afternoon, and the parents were responsible for them. And sometimes parents were jerks, but most of them were caring individuals.
Mhm.
And when you called them and said, we got a problem, that you could work with them. I don't think that's fundamentally changed.
Yeah. I think another important view of that, exactly what you said, is the fact that in this state, in this nation, we are required to educate our children. There, you can get, at least, and please correct me if I'm wrong, if you do not educate your child under the age of 18, then there's a potential that your child can be taken away from you. And because you'd be considered negligent.
Well, yeah, if you don't send your child to school,
Yeah.
or then document that child is getting an education. But
Yes.
but we've lost the concept of what education is.
Well, I think to that point, though, is that if we are required as parents to do that, then we should have a say in how this education should go about, especially when it comes to supporting our families. And what you had just mentioned is that for some reason the teachers union they do not believe that that is really true. I mean, because what happens to them, right? Right, if we don't send our kids to school, right?
Well,
Maybe they'll
look
be out
at
of
what's
the
being
job. I
said
don't
on a
know.
national level with NEA. I mean, you've heard those speeches.
Right.
These people are on a totally different path than the majority of parents are. The way I look at it, education ought to empower children
Mhm.
and enable them to grow up to be productive adults in a constitutional republic that we have, which means they not only have to have skills to be able to be productive in a society, they also must have an appreciation for their role in preserving the freedoms that were granted by our forefathers, actually coming from God. So.
Now, if you were to give a grade of the California Teachers Association and the Department of Education, what grade would you give them 10 years ago versus today?
10 years ago, that's tough. I'd even go back maybe a little farther.
Keep going. Yeah.
Well, today that's easy. F minus, frankly.
They fail.
Yeah. When I was teaching and I would go to conferences, I would get training. I would get training in how to teach my subject matter, English. When I went to college, I got a classical education back in the 1960s. Do the math on that. I mean, I would say that, and when we had the highest standards, we had the highest math standards in the country. We had the highest language arts standards in the country. So I'd have to at least say maybe a B. I don't know. But the bottom line is where we are now is so far removed to where I was in a public school environment. I think where it really hurts is in my area of expertise, which was academic debate. Academic debate was the epitome of critical thinking skills.
Exactly.
We constantly are told by our educators now that the important thing is critical thinking. Their critical thinking has nothing to do with what I taught, which was logic and evidence and reasoning, fallacies. It was all head work. In an academic debate, emotion simply did not play a role.
Right.
All of your argumentation, all of your presentation had to be based on evidence and reasoning, and the ability to defend your evidence and the quality of your evidence. And we applied the tests of evidence as well as the tests of reasoning against your opponent, and the ability to take both sides. That no longer functions. I've even been told that these kinds of skills are racist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have been told
Right.
that emotions are a better indication of truth
Yeah.
than logic.
Mm.
And children know best.
And children know best. Oh yeah, children know best. Don't forget that. I mean, hey.
Yeah. I see the narrative, and being a politician, I can see where we have been, because I grew up under that same environment that you were raised. The Norman Rockwell paintings, and the sitting down and having the Thanksgiving dinners and the Christmas dinners, and even that's considered racist these days. So how far we've declined for the purposes of money, control, and power.
Mhm.
And back about 2018, when I was starting to see the slipping down this slippery slope, and now I could never envision where we are today, and with the new laws that they're putting in place. And trust me, there's thousands of laws they put in front of Assembly and Senate per year that affect
Oh, yeah.
us and our children,
Mhm.
in our businesses.
Right.
So while we're sitting down just trying to make bills and live a carefree life, or just stay out of my life, big government, they're working overtime to control our children, to monetize our children, what we're seeing.
Our children are a commodity.
Exactly.
Our children are a commodity.
It's very concerning. I think everyone should really take the time and revisit this and listen to the key talking points that were being shared. Because without this information, without having the empowerment of knowledge, and critical thinking is just one part of it, but is doing the actual research. So you feel you have the answers you need, because you need to be a parent, stand up to be a parent. And I think we should have a parents' union, don't you think, Florida?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, I have to make this comment. It's just burning inside of me, and it's going back to the whole idea of MTSS. And I had mentioned this before when I was speaking with somebody, just a concern I had in regards to the deepening involvement of welfare in schools, to a point where it was almost overtaking academics. And it's one of those conversations where you kind of hesitant because nobody wants to be anti-welfare, for people that are in need. But it seems like schools aren't necessarily, even though they may be one conduit, it seems like right now that they are the core conduit. And so one of the things that we were talking about in our conversations is that conduit strengthening to so much that it's now marketable. Right? I mean, it might have a new industry brewing. There are little there's evidence maybe to support some of that. And how that's related to MTSS, and again, I'm not a school teacher, but I'm a parent of a child who went through years of special ed, which is why if you ask me, I am a huge proponent of public schools, because my child would have never been able to function without the support of somebody who was well trained in that position. I love teachers. I think I love their profession. I respect it deeply. But it has been somehow hijacked by special interests that have nothing to really do with much of educating our children. And so with MTSS, it was really critical in my family, because my daughter needed that kind of support, that kind of behavioral. It is, from what I understood, a form of behavioral modification program that's typically
part of it.
utilized.
Yeah. Mhm.
It's typically utilized to provide those supports for children in need, such as my daughter. Now, what's terrible is what happened, like you said, is then they ended up, I guess they, meaning the teachers union in the greater California Board of Education, decided to apply a very broad application of MTSS. What does that mean? That means instead of kids that have been specifically identified through very rigorous testing as a child in need, now every child has a problem that needs to be fixed. And we're going to assume whether they agree to that or not, we're going to teach them and have them understand that they have problems. Right. And so now that's like a really great environment to have programs such as critical race theory. You're not good enough, or, oh, you're terrible because you come from a certain lineage. Well, I have news for you. My kids are multiracial. So what side do they pick? You know what I mean? It's
Whatever
just not an
works.
argument. Yeah, it's not an argument that holds
What if
water.
nothing works?
Exactly. So, so it's really important, getting back to Josh Newman, to really identify people who tend to promote this and support it, and even worse, advance it. So here we have a great opportunity for the voters to voice their opinion on how well they like the schools right now, and that is whether to put people like Josh Newman back into office or not.
Who are the other candidates that they could actually research to find out there's actually a viable option?
My understanding is that basically on going up to November 5th, since it's no longer one day, keep forgetting that.
Election season.
Wishful thinking, yeah. It's going to come down to Josh Newman versus Stephen Choi.
This is amazing, and I thank you for all your insights, and I learned quite a bit today. Absolutely. I think people that listened in, as you know, I always do this. This is my 3 pillars of advancing: listen, learn, then you can lead. But the listening skill is so undervalued these days, and that's what I do, spend most of my time just listening to your great insights. But now it's time to get active. And I won't go political on you. I can just say that thank you for laying out the facts, because people need to hear this. They need to be empowered. No more sitting on the couch, no quarterback sitting on the couch flying. I mean, we're at a stage in California history that parents are being arrested for protecting their children. I think it's time to change that.
Yeah, it is. It's past time. It's past time.
Yes, agreed. So, Florida, back to you.
Well, Linda, I just want to thank you so much. You've been a wonderful guest, and just like James, I've learned so much from this interview.
Yes.
And I just applaud what you're doing, and that you continue just to serve the public and stand up for the parents who, for some reason, parents are busy, right? They don't know how or not. They don't know how to make additional time to do what you're doing to help out and support children in academics. So thank you again.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, make sure when we send an invitation, you come back and update us on what you're doing and how we can help people. Because it's not only for laying out the problems, but we have to come up with suggestions and solutions.
Well, I think I could tell you how you can help now, and to anyone who hears this podcast, pay attention to what's going on in your local school boards. That's my focus right now. At the county level, I consider that local. I've been very active at the county level, and I'm very pleased with the results, although I certainly played a part. I didn't make it happen. There were incredible people that worked along with me, and but right now the focus is on local boards because they are the ones that are on the November ballot, and we have a very challenging race here in Placentia, Yorba Linda.
Okay, well, that's the message, everyone. Get engaged. Be involved now.
Yeah.
Thank you all for listening today. This is a very powerful and timely portion of our election season. So take some time, do some research, and thank you all for listening to Uncensored Beat, the unfiltered truth. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And also, we'll bring you on the air as well. Share your thoughts with all of us.
Welcome to Uncensored Beat.
I showed up. U.S. citizen is not permitted entry.
Cover the next big attack.
Zelensky's seemingly fraudulent election.
Bilateral security agreement President Joe Biden signed.
Quebec, the communist capital of North America.
What do Ukrainians think about US? Some believe that the US is to blame for this war.